Sorry, I got disconnected. We were talking about in China and the Ming ruler named Yongle. And even though foreigners were kept for coming into the Forbidden City, Yongle wanted to know about the rest of the world. So he thought, what could I do? Well, maybe I could build ships and we could send them to different places and explore different places. These ships would be magnificent and show off all of our wealth and riches. I could pay Chinese explorers and maybe have a admiral lead this whole expedition, and then to go off into distant lands and bring back news of what's going on over there, and maybe bring back some souvenirs and things that we don't have here. Yongle knew just the guy to lead this exploration. He would be his admiral, to boldly go where no Chinese have gone before, to explore strange and faraway lands, and to show off our wealth and our glory. Good plan. He had a good plan going. And that's what this lesson 81 is about. It's called the Voyages of Zheng. It was back in the 1400s of China, and they were very great shipbuilders, skilled throughout the generations. From clear back in the Song dynasty, they built these magnificent ships. As you look at your lesson there, China in the sea was a beautiful place. It's a dangerous place, but the sea was covered with beautiful, the oceans from Africa to Australia to North Arabia, to the Bay of Bengal in India, and clear to Antarctica. The Indian Ocean was huge. It was 2.5 miles deep, and it took up 1/5 of the oceans of the world. The East and South China Seas along the Vietnam coast, too, were beautiful. Many sea creatures, 1,787 species of fish, hundreds of islands, reefs and coral reefs, starfish, crabs, mollusks, fish, birds, albatross, penguins, jellyfish, man of wars, flying fish, groupers, lanternfish, sharks, anchovies, sailfish, turtles, dolphins, seals, whales, you name it. They had it in China, on the China coast. And then the Indian Ocean. Needless to say, China was into shipbuilding, huh? In fact, China was a naval superpower. In 1368, the Ming's dynasty overthrew Kublai Khan, the Yuan dynasty. And now, Zheng Ding, Yongle, he was the divine lord of all heaven. He was the ruler of the Ming dynasty. And all nations would have to, and people would have to pay tribute to him. And he wanted to show off his power. So he decided to send fleets of ships over 1,000 miles. China had sent some of these ships before, of course, but nothing like this. Let me tell you, this was totally spectacular. And 1,000 years before any other European country built ships like these, ever. These ships were so magnificent. The fleets of ships, first of all, the fleets were huge. They would send 300 ships out at a time. The distance covered would be huge, 1,000 miles. They planned to go 1,000 miles on these ships. And these ships, of course, were magnificent. They had many sails, like 12 to 24 sails and 9 masts. They were over 400 foot long and 160 feet wide, which is as big as a football field. 4 decks. They covered 4 decks. And there would be balconies over the seas. There would be windows with balconies on them where they could look over the sea, almost like some of the cruise ships of today. And then they would have 60 huge treasure ships of these ships, and they'd have supply ships for water. One just covered water for everyone. They had ships that held soldiers and horses and cannons and hauled the whole army. These ships, the first journey, 27,800 men, sailors, workers, carpenters, repairmen, soldiers, diplomats, scholars, astronomers, you name it. They were on these ships. And the admiral, his admiral was Zheng He. And we call the Voyages of Zheng He. Who is Zheng He? Who in the world? Hey, who is he? Zheng He. Well, it's Yongel's close bodyguard. He was a Mongol eunuch, and his name was Zheng He. But he was born in western China, a Mongol under Kublai Khan. He was captured when he was only 10 years old and taken as a slave. He was trained for the military and turned out to be a great leader. He was tall, 6 foot tall, unusual for a Chinese person to be 6 foot tall. And his chest measured 60 inches. 40 inches was normal, so he was a huge guy. And so they brought him in so that he would be a good guard for the princes. And so he became the Yongel's bodyguard. And he was loyal to Yongle. And he was Yongel's choice to be the admiral, to send out this huge 300 fleet of ships, 300 ships in his fleet. Can you imagine that? Zheng He was the most famous and best admiral in China's history. And he made 7 voyages. And they're very famous and documented. And they're in your book there. A few things about them. The first voyage was the most magnificent voyage. From 1405 to 1407, it took 2 years. And that's one where it was 300 ships and 60 treasure ships. And you could see the map where they went. They went up to around where Vietnam is, and Thailand, and Malaysia, Java, where Sri Lanka is now, and Calcutta, that area. And it took those 2 years, and they stopped in all those places. And then the second voyage happened in the 1408 to 1409, a year long. And that one was only 68 ships, and it went the same way to Calcutta. And they went and they had a ceremony there to inaugurate a king. In 1409 to 1411, they had 48 ships, an army of 30,000 soldiers. They went to trade for ebony and ivory and aloe and all these things. Up to Ceylon. When they went to Ceylon there, they had a mini war and defeated them there. And they took the king home, but later on they let him go. 1413 to 1415 was the fourth voyage. 63 ships, 28,000 men. They revisited the places in Southeast Asia and India and the Bay of Bengal. They went clear up to where Bangladesh is. They traded sapphires, rubies, topaz, pearls, carpets, coral beads, woolen garments, and they brought home, as they went to the African coast, they brought home lions, zebras, giraffes, leopards, ostrich, white pigeons. They brought all these home as souvenirs. In 1417 to 1419, many representatives traveled to China, and this was to bring 17 representatives that were taken back to their home countries. And they went up the east coast of Africa to Somalia and even to Kenya. So they were visiting, and they were just showing off, weren't they? The sixth voyage in 1421 to 1402, we went to Southeast Asia, to the Indian-Persian Gulf. They took 19 representatives home that time. They went probably clear into Mozambique along the African coast. The seventh journey happened in 1431 to 1433. You see, Yongle had died, and his son did not want to send any voyages, so he took a break. But then his grandson said yes, he did. He was all into it. And so his name was Ziazon, kind of strange name. And he sent 100 large ships with 27,000 men, you know, with Zheng He. But Zheng He never returned. He was buried at sea. He died on his journey. These ships, maybe they say, had made it to Australia, and some even say maybe some of them had made it to North America, because they went all over. But the next Ming emperors, they didn't want to discover lands anymore. They believed China was already the best country in the world. They thought Chinese art and science was perfect. They didn't need to be improved. They didn't need the Western world. They didn't need to go and settle in different countries. And they made the Great Wall even stronger to protect and keep out the West. Shipbuilding was made illegal for ocean-going ships, and anyone who tried to sail to other countries and trade would be executed. The Forbidden City was separated from the rest of the world for centuries, only until like 90 years ago. The last Chinese emperors were driven out, and some buildings were destroyed, and today they were rebuilt, and now as a tourist you can go to China and you can see the Forbidden City. Zheng He was Yongel's guy to show off. Zheng He the Admiral. 28 years of his life, he was the captain of the greatest fleets, the Admiral. And he connected China to the world. And in his life, he got to see this beautiful sea, these beautiful ships, and these awesome voyages. Those were the voyages of Zheng He.